Welcome, 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 everyone. Introduce yourselves in the chat. We'll get started in a few minutes. People are streaming in right now. Say where you're calling in from. Representative Bowman is in the chat.
Imagine children across America are studying arts and science in buildings that are comfortable every day of the year, where the air, walls, and water are clean and healthy. All the while, community gardens and rooftop solar panels are showing them what science and the planet can do. You have a good new job maintaining those panels. Your neighbor has a job teaching that science class, and another friend is employed as school counselor. On extremely hot and cold days, people can shelter in this large, safe building. The school emits 0 carbon, but it does so much more than that. Social connections are forged. For the 9 out of 10 children in public schools, the Green New Deal for public schools invests $1.4 trillion in their education and their future. We're stabilizing the climate, educating our children, and rebuilding working-class Black and brown neighborhoods after decades of government neglect, with green schools, green stimulus, and green jobs. When we win a Green New Deal for public schools, it will mean schools we can all be proud of. And we can win it. But it'll take students, parents, teachers, workers, and community members coming together across the country to do it. Join the fight now at greennewschools.com to build the world our children deserve. Imagine children.
So good, we had to hear it twice. Welcome, everybody. I'm just astounded at how many folks are logging on. We're over 400 right now, and the number just keeps picking up. I'm Thea Rio-Francos, she, her pronouns, an organizer with DSA, and I'm here to welcome everybody to this amazing public launch for the Green New Deal for Public Schools campaign. And I just want to say that it's especially impressive to see so many folks turning out for this right on the heels of our big national convention. And I think it's clear that comrades across the country want to get to work. The turnout and the enthusiasm around this launch speaks to our shared desire to confront the climate crisis head on, to organize around the intersections of climate and inequality, to build broad and powerful movements that can dismantle fossil fueled capitalism and build something green and just in its place. This week saw the publication of yet another IPCC report detailing the severity of global warming. As usual, mainstream media coverage has focused on an apocalyptic narrative that fails to name the powerful actors that are responsible for this crisis, or the disruptive collective action and radical transformation required to address it. As a political vision, the Green New Deal does just that, tackles the crisis at scale, guided by a theory of power that targets its roots in capitalism and white supremacy, and sees the multiracial working class as the agent of change. But precisely because the Green New Deal is so big and so ambitious, and the climate timeline is so pressing and urgent, we have to think strategically about our political program, our demands, and our tactics to win. That means we need a strong climate, labor, community coalition organized around issues that affect everyday life, with clear material gains for ordinary people. We couldn't ask for a better legislative demand to rally around than Representative Jamaal Bowman's Green New Deal for Public Schools bill, a historic $1.4 trillion investment in the communities devastated by racial capitalism and by the climate crisis that would transform our public schools from symbols of dilapidation and disrepair into zero carbon, green, energy efficient, and equitable pillars of our communities, and create over 1 million dignified jobs a year in the process. To win this landmark legislation, DSA is organizing alongside our comrades and our allies in the labor movement, the youth climate movement, and parents. In other words, we are working to build the social bases and constituencies that will not only win this huge public investment in green schools, but go on to fight for more across the decade of the Green New Deal. We need all hands on deck to do this. Throughout this call, you'll learn how to get involved in your chapters, your neighborhoods, and at a national level. So before I turn it on to our very special guest speakers, I want to say a really brief word about the uncertainty and the anxiety pervading school reopenings across the country. As we speak, schools are beginning to open their doors. Some of these schools are not only in areas with concerning levels of Delta variant transmission, but with governors who have issued executive orders outlining mask mandates. Teachers, students, support staff, and parents are extremely and rightfully concerned about their health and safety. Through this campaign, we will listen to and amplify these grievances, stand in solidarity with workers and communities as they demand basic protections, and organize to ensure a different and better future for our public schools. And now I want to turn it over to our first special guest speaker, Representative Jamaal Bowman. Representative Bowman is a member of Lower Hudson Valley DSA and a DSA endorsed member of Congress, proudly serving New York's 16th district. But he also speaks to us today as a former public school principal and a longtime advocate for an equitable education system for all. Representative Bowman, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Peace and love to you all. It's such an honor and so exciting to be with you in community this evening. I want to thank you all for joining us. I want to thank you all for believing in me personally and believing in this movement for a Green New Deal and a Green New Deal for our public schools. This is obviously an important moment as our Earth, our planet, is dying and in need for transformative change to be led by us who are visionary, progressive, innovative people working in so many different spaces. So thank you all for being who you are and doing what you do and organizing from the ground up. And I know we will make the Green New Deal for public schools a reality and begin to move our planet in the right direction. Let's go into some of the specifics of this $1.43 trillion investment in our K-12 education system. And now let me say this, not only does our planet need this in this moment, as the IPCC report informed us all a couple of days ago. We already knew that, but it informed the rest of the country. But our students deserve this, and our students have been waiting for this. I worked in public schools for 20 years. I worked in all Title I schools, which means I worked in some of the highest need schools in the country, located within red line communities. Students demand, deserve, and need this because they are the ones, if we do the right thing, through the Green New Deal for public schools to unlock their unlimited potential. They're the ones that are going to solve the problems that we are dealing with today and take us into the 22nd century. So 1.43 trillion investment, what's in it? 446 billion in climate capital facilities grants and 40 billion for a climate change resiliency program, which will retrofit every public school building in the country, starting with the highest need districts, to create safe, healthy, zero carbon, accessible learning environments for students and staff. What else? 250 billion in resource block grants, drastically reducing student to staff ratios. We all know our classrooms have too many students, especially as we return from COVID. It is more important now than ever to lower class size. So 250 billion in resource block grants, drastically reducing student to staff ratios, equipping schools to approach target ratios of 12:1 for grades K to 8 and 15:1 for grades K to 9. Now, if you're wealthy and you go to schools in the suburbs or private schools, you already have these ratios. It's inequitable, unfair, and unacceptable that our public schools do not have these ratios. We aim to strengthen and diversify the educator pipeline and better integrate local knowledge and community relationships in high-need schools. What else? 695 billion over 10 years for Title I and IDEA increases. IDEA is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, focusing on our children with special needs. We have neglected them for far too long. They are also brilliant. They have so much to offer, but we need to invest in them in an equitable way. The Green New Deal for Schools does that. We aim to quadruple Title I funding to reach 66 billion annually to support school districts with students living in poverty, and increasing funding for IDEA Part B to reach 33 billion annually to support our students with disabilities. What else? 100 million for an education equity planning grants pilot program to address historic school funding inequities within regions. What else? Create and fund 1.3 million jobs every single year. Targeting redline communities, you're targeting communities with high concentrations of poverty. You're also targeting communities with high unemployment rates. This will create 1.3 million jobs a year. Eliminate carbon emissions from schools, which is equivalent of taking 17 million cars off the road. Cut most annual school utility bills by over 50%. Make every single school a food, green energy, and disaster resiliency center for the surrounding community. Now, here's the political context, okay? Reconciliation bill has passed the Senate. It is coming over to the House. I was just informed maybe 30 minutes ago by Leader Hoyer that we will be voting on this thing the end of August. So we have a few weeks now to lobby leadership, to inform them how important it is for a Green New Deal for public schools to be a part of the reconciliation package, particularly school retrofits. That's what we have been pushing for. 446 billion over 10 years, 44 billion this year. This is what we have been pushing for. So it's important for leadership on the Ed and Labor Committee to hear your voices, and your representatives in Congress to hear your voices, to know that you support this. It's critical, and you'll hear about how to do that throughout this call. So we have a couple of weeks of lobbying, but again, this is just the beginning. We are not only lobbying for the reconciliation package. We need a Green New Deal for public schools implemented in schools across the country, so the work continues after the reconciliation process comes to an end. So once again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your energy, your love, your enthusiasm. I need to represent and recognize that this is a coalition approach. So huge shout out to all the DSA members on the call. Huge shout out to Sunrise Movement on the call. Huge shout out to local unions, particularly IBEW, Local 134. Huge shout out to the president of the AFT in Massachusetts. AFT is down with this. We have unions down with this. We have labor down with this. We have grassroots down with this. Let's take it to another level. Thank you all so much. Looking forward to the rest of the call.
Hey there, my name's Gustavo. Thank you so much, Representative Bowman. That was great. My name's Gustavo. I'm in New York City, in Brooklyn. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm on the National Political Committee of DSA. I'm really pumped to be here with you all. I've been working on the campaign for a while with dozens of other DSA members, and it's really great to be here in this group with over 500 people now, from unions and Sunrise Movement and workers from every sector. So I'm going to go over the campaign plan really briefly. Essentially, a major goal of this campaign is to close the considerable gap between the broad working class and the left and the socialist movement. The UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's new report yesterday was urgent and dire. We know we need to demand urgent and rapid decarbonization, but how, with what social base, with what numbers? We need a fight to organize around that grows the socialist movement and connects the climate crisis to working class power and a just future. So we want to use the infrastructure bill fight that's dominating headlines until the next month or two to spark deep organizing throughout the country, because we know that this is a long-term fight for a Green New Deal. The Green New Deal for public schools represents a fight for decarbonization and universal public goods, which is exactly where we wanted to start. The coalition that has a stake in this fight is huge. Every community would benefit in the country: educators, support staff, paraeducators, building trades workers, parents, and students. They all have a stake in this. And we know that schools are local, so that means that we can build local power for a national campaign and create local political bonds that won't suddenly fade. So this is going to be a test case for our theory of change. We want to target specific groups of the working class, specific sectors, especially labor and communities. So we want chapters and other people who are organizing around this fight to target within the labor sector, educators and other school workers, and also building trades unions. And we'll hear reps from those areas later. And then we also want to organize parents and students and to bring these groups together to create a mega coalition that can win a Green New Deal in the future. The tactics that we're going to be using is mostly canvassing and recontacting, so that we can start to recruit maybe people who are not politicized yet into our movement, because our movement is not strong or big enough yet. We'll be using petitions and using that to form local campaign committees. Next slide, please. So the basic campaign timeline, the first two phases, that's kind of what we've been doing for the past couple of months. Throw some plus signs in the chat if you've been coming to our weekly campaign calls already, if you're a chapter rep, or if you're organizing your school, if you work in a school or you're a student. That's awesome to see people from all over the country. So DSA chapters have already started to form campaign organizing committees. We're asking people to identify leads from each of the sectors that we're trying to organize. So a field lead to organize communities, an educator lead, and a building trades lead. And then these leads are going to build buy-in throughout their chapter to pass a resolution to prioritize the campaign. School workers are organizing in their schools, and building trades workers are organizing in their unions. And essentially, we want to build up this activity to escalate in August and September and beyond. And we'll hear a little bit more about some like immediate action steps that we've planned for this week. But the two main, that's going to be phone banking. But the two main forms of escalation that we'll probably be rolling out are going to be either rallies or protests or town halls. And I will leave it there and pass it on to Thea.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Gustavo. I'm going to turn it over now to our other guest speakers. We've got 3 in a row from Sunrise, from IBEW Local 134, and from AFT Massachusetts. So let's kick it off with JP.
Good afternoon, good evening, good hello to everyone, wherever you're tuning in from. Thank you so much for being here tonight to kick off this very, very, very exciting piece of legislation. I have grown up I was born and raised in Miami, Florida, and I am about 1.5 years fresh out of high school. And I want to go back to a moment in high school that I will never forget as an organizer. In 2017, when Hurricane Irma brushed over Miami, my classmates and I all got out of school in fear when the state of emergency had been declared. Never before had we seen a storm so intense brew in such little time. When the hurricane was hurtling towards us, my mom and I raided our closets, raided our pantries, and grabbed what we needed. We went to the home of a more affluent friend who had more resources, and luckily the storm merely brushed over us. But the impacts were still felt. As I began to go back to my neighborhood, to people who looked more like me, to people who were cast as second-class citizens, to neighborhoods of workers, I realized that it was those of us who had historically been branded as second-class citizens who paid the most for this storm. And despite all of that despair and all of that pain, the builders and the caretakers and the leaders of our community were ready to get to work to repair it all. And when I went back to school after a week of having no power, I watched some kids scarf down their lunch, savoring the first hot meal that they'd had in a week. Things don't have to be this way. The violence and precarity that we saw during that storm, let me be clear, was a policy choice. I spent the rest of high school organizing my peers to pressure our local governments to take on bold climate action, pressuring our school board to keep our schools resilient, and also started a community garden to make sure that within our school, no student would have to go hungry and could also learn about the beautiful fruits that our earth had to offer. And this was all great, but it was never enough. When I check sea level rise maps today, projections show that in a number of years, if the crisis goes unabated, my school, that place where I made all these great memories, won't be there anymore. It's set to be swallowed by the ocean. And that's not fair. We let kids dream on the promise that hard work and doing the right thing will be rewarded by a good and safe life. We have promised that to every kid. But failed leadership has broken that promise. How can we say we care for our kids when we fund jail cells more than classrooms? How can we say we care for our kids when we still force them to drink poisoned water from lead pipes? How can we say we care for our kids and leave them behind an uninhabitable world? We can't. Failed leadership has broken this deal to our kids for far too long. And so we need a new deal to be formed. And that new deal starts off with Representative Bowman's Green New Deal for public schools. Our schools are sought to be a safe haven for all students and community members, not wastelands. So what is this all about? What is this piece of legislation all about? It's about funding education over policing and incarceration. It's about making sure that every kid from every background can be looked at in the eyes from their teacher or staff person at the school and be promised a bright future. It's about equipping the next generation of scientists, caretakers, nurses, artists, engineers, journalists, and all workers with the tools, knowledge, care, and commitment to tackle the complex crises that the next few decades will bring. This is a serious fight, and one that will reflect how much we actually care for the future of our kids and for the future of this planet and for the future of all workers. So Sunrise, you bet we are throwing down with DSA and Representative Bowman to make sure that the Green New Deal for public schools is taken up. So thank you very much. And I want to hand it over to our great union friend now, Amy.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name's Amy. I'm a member of Chicago DSA and a third-year apprentice electrician in IBEW Local 134. So we're the folks keeping the lights on here in the Chicago area. I was so excited when I learned about this campaign and was given the opportunity to be a part of it. Representative Bowman's proposal means a lot of good jobs for folks in the building trades, and it's work that any of us would be proud to do. Even more exciting, though, is what this campaign does to create a common interest between the building trades and the rest of the working class, working towards a project that will serve the economy and our communities as a whole. Here in Chicago, like in so much of the country, our public schools and other public institutions are in dire need of repair, and the retrofits discussed by Representative Bowman are going to go a long way towards making those repairs happen. This campaign offers the hope that we can all take on a role in fundamentally reshaping our communities. In our local, we just renegotiated our collective bargaining agreement, winning language that defines green energy as officially our work. So those are going to be union jobs. We already provide training through our apprenticeship program in school, and we've had the experience of partnering with area schools through the Illinois Future Energy Jobs Act and grants that they've provided to put solar panels on certain schools and provide education about green energy to students. So we have a lot of room to basically be able to build off of that work that we've already started. It's important for us in the trades to build off of that work and embrace a role in the climate justice movement as the people who are going to be building our next generation of infrastructure while improving the places where our children learn and where our partners, family members, and friends work. I'm having conversations with fellow members in my local about getting involved in this campaign. And I would like to say, especially to the young folks who are on this call, if you care about the climate movement, consider a career in the building trades. Our unions need your voices. And in the trades, you'll be able to fight for campaigns like this one while doing rewarding work and claiming one of the good jobs that we in the labor movement are always talking about. I'm so excited to have this opportunity and to be in the fight with y'all. So thank you very much. And I'm going to pass it over now to Beth, president of the AFT, Massachusetts.
Hey, listening to JP and listening to Amy, I'm just going to add a few points. They've really covered it. So hi, everyone. I'm Beth Contos. I use the she, her pronouns. I'm the president of the American Federation of Teachers, Massachusetts, and I'm also a member of the Massachusetts DSA. It's an honor to be here with you. At the AFT Mass Convention in May, we passed 2 resolutions supporting the need for climate actions to stop the rapid advancement of climate change and to create green schools in our communities. There are people on the line here tonight that were part of those resolutions. A shout out to them. They know who they are. They can write it in the chat. It's not a coincidence that Congressman Bowman, as a lifelong educator, also sees the need to upgrade and fortify our schools. The pandemic has made it obvious that we have not invested in our school buildings, our heating, our cooling, our drinking water, or in our staffing. We need appropriate physical and personnel infrastructure to create the best outcomes for our students and for all our students, not just those who live in wealthy communities. In Massachusetts, we have some communities that have HVAC systems that cool buildings in the warm months and heat appropriately in the cold months. All educators know that controlling climate inside our buildings leads to better outcomes for students. But far too many of our classrooms are freezing in the winter and unbearable in the warm months. My students often wore their coats all day long in the winter months. We have many buildings in Massachusetts that were built more than 100 years ago without proper heat or cooling or ventilation at all, other than windows. And many of our windows are nailed to only open a small amount so nobody falls out of them. So we need much better learning conditions, and our students deserve it. We know that increasing heat and cooling also increases the need for energy use in our schools. A few of our buildings have solar panels to mitigate the increased need for energy. And those lucky students get to learn firsthand about solar power and other green technology as part of their curriculum, using tools to chart their energy production and use. It's wonderful. I know some of those students see themselves working in the green energy field along with Amy. And when they grow up, they might want to be an installer, an electrician, or as a scientist to make the technology even better. But all of our students deserve to see themselves in these roles and benefit from appropriate heating, cooling, and air filtration, especially during the pandemic, as Congressman Bowman stated. At the other end of the spectrum, we have schools with mold problems that increase absenteeism by creating breathing problems for our students and staff. Loss of days in class equals lost learning time. That leads to poorer education outcomes for our students. We must do better. We can do better. And if we truly care about the education outcomes for our students, then we need to create an environment that is conducive to learning. This bill calls for an investment in the buildings, in climate resiliency, green energy, and appropriate staffing in all our schools to create the education and wraparound services all our students deserve. We need to address the historical harm that underinvestment has created. It's time for a revolution in our schools. We must invest in our school environment. We must invest in our students, and we can do this in all our communities, not just the wealthiest. I hope you'll join me and AFT Mass and AFT National in supporting Congressman Bowman's Green New Deal for Public Schools Act. I'm going to pass it back to Thea now so we can hear from others.
Thank you so much. I'm so inspired just to hear these voices from kind of across the labor and youth and DSA coalition that we're building to support and win a Green New Deal for public schools. Super inspiring. So with that in mind, I'm going to pivot us to some DSA organizers that are working on campaigns at the chapter level around the country. We really have a broad, diverse geography of folks that are working on campaigns. And so I'm going to start it off with Scott, and we'll hear from several organizers in a row, and then we'll be pivoting to Q&A after that. So stay with us. Scott.
Thank you, Thea. My name is Scott Kelly, he, him, and I'm a biology professor at San Diego State University and a proud union member coming to you from the Metro branch of the San Diego DSA chapter. I'm especially excited about the Green New Deal for public schools because I know from experience exactly why it is needed. I was a third grade teacher in a seriously overcrowded elementary school in Houston, Texas. The kids had to learn and the teachers had to teach in overheated, toxic trailers, and there wasn't a blade of grass inside, although we could see the grass right across the street. We couldn't touch it. That school really needs a Green New Deal for public schools. Our chapters really embrace this plan, and our dedicated team is making real progress. We created and approved a Green New Deal for public schools resolution. We've identified a target. We're asking to co-sponsor Representative Sarah Jacobs, who previously co-sponsored, as I recall, the Green New Deal. And so we think it's a good target. We've identified a potential school in her district, and the school's not waiting for us. They've already built a community garden, so they have the idea in their heads. We've drafted a petition we're circulating, and we created a database of potential volunteers. Our biggest challenge right now is getting someone inside the school. The teachers are really busy with COVID. They're on vacation, which I totally understand, and are getting ready for a really busy school year. But we're moving forward. Moving forward, we're going to get into tabling and canvassing with summer camps, markets, school meetings. We're going to put together a big event. We're going to put together a public event, and we're going to use this campaign as a springboard to develop a bigger DSA presence in the district. So to wrap up, so we have some key issues to sort out, but we're making a lot of progress. We're really excited. We want to tackle literally the biggest threat to all life on Earth by supporting the literal future of our kids. So thank you, and I'm going to pass it on to Devin.
How's everybody doing? Good to see everybody. Name's Devin, he, him, pronouns. I'm out of Jacksonville, Florida. I'm actually the lead of the Green New Deal for Public Schools campaign in Jacksonville. And we are throwing down here in Jacksonville. So we actually just had our first meeting about this maybe a few days ago. We've actually already have picked out our school. So our school is actually going to be Inglewood High. And we're kind of focusing on the northwestern side and the west side of Jacksonville to start our canvassing. And our first day in canvassing is actually going to be this Saturday. And to kind of tag alongside that, a good comrade, Gustavo, actually plugged me into one of the DMs of one of my comrades, Connor, who's actually in Tallahassee. And we're looking to do some work together because Tallahassee and the north side of Jacksonville actually share the same exact rep, Al Lawson. So I think it would be a great idea for us to work together in that respect and kind of bounce ideas off each other. And at the same time, I'm actually from Pensacola, or the Panhandle side or the far west side of Florida. So I've spoken with them, I've been in meetings with them, and they are definitely wanting to throw down for this as well. So we on the north side of Florida are really trying to throw down for all it's worth, and we're definitely giving it all that we got. Okay, and to top it off, maybe in the next couple of weeks or so, we are looking to do something of the sort like a panel kickoff where we may invite some people out to an event or a Zoom call where we can actually push this out even further to make sure everybody actually hears about this even more so. But with that being said, I appreciate you guys' time, and I'm actually going to pass it along to Will.
All right, thank you, Devin. I appreciate it. All right, hi everyone. My name is Will, he, him pronouns, another proud union member and a relatively new DSA member with the West Suburban Illinois chapter. So I think the speakers before us really already made the compelling case for why this legislation is so important. So I won't get into that, but what I'll try to speak to is a little bit about why it was important to our chapter locally, and then a little bit about sort of how it's even affected me personally in a way. So we covered the suburbs of Chicago, which is just a sprawl of really diverse communities, racially, ethnically, economically, but where there are drastic economic disparities in neighboring communities. And this, of course, manifests itself in public schools like it does across the country. And there's really an urgent need for massive investment in that infrastructure in those public schools. In those schools where, they've been neglected for decades while their counterparts in the next suburb over are flourishing and have been flourishing for as long as they've been neglected. So we really leapt at the chance to participate in this campaign. So to say a little bit about our efforts, we started out small, I think, as probably a lot of the chapters who are getting involved did, but we were very enthusiastic. So my co-lead, my comrade Purnima, and I had many excited conversations and lengthy conversations post weekly call to determine how we were going to move forward. And we have been very successful in organizing internally. We had a really great internal chapter meeting recently in which we had a really, really great experienced set of West Suburban Illinois DSA members join, educators, people who have run political campaigns for themselves and for others, people who are involved in the media, union members, parents, really the whole gamut of people, and with experience ranging from decades as DSA members to people who are even newer than I am, and I am brand new. This is my first national campaign. So we have done a number of the steps to prepare ourselves to, I think, be very successful, and also very enthusiastic. So we're very grateful to be included here this evening. I'm looking forward to working with the rest of you all and having success in winning a Green New Deal for public schools. So thank you. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Gavin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gavin Buckley. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm speaking from the west side of Detroit, where I live and proudly teach at my neighborhood public high school. I'm also a proud member of the mighty Detroit Federation of Teachers. I am an organizer with our local rank and file reform caucus, MyCorps, and of course, a member of Detroit DSA. We are joining this campaign in Detroit because the chaos of climate change becomes realer for us and our neighbors every day as we weather historic floods this summer, crumbling city infrastructure, and navigate the continued crimes of countless local corporate polluters. We are joining this campaign because I and my coworkers and our students work and learn in some of the most dilapidated, worst funded, and least safe schools in the state and indeed in the country. We have an opportunity with this campaign to say that the floods harming our neighbors and destroying our homes are connected to the leak in my classroom ceiling, that the Marathon Corporation's oil refinery nearby is connected to the mold in the school bathrooms, the ancient broken HVAC system in my building, and the abandoned school buildings that dot the neighborhoods of this city. That it is no accident that the most polluted zip codes, the worst funded schools, and the lowest paid teachers all exist in Detroit. In the face of the climate despair, in the face of the ruthless ruling class attacks on public education, we have an opportunity to build hope. Hope through the power of united school workers, hope through the power of our unions and building trades unions, hope through the power of communities united against fossil fuel corporations and our unrepresentative government that protects them, and hope ultimately in a Green New Deal and our shared socialist horizon. So far locally, we have built a partnership between the Detroit DSA Eco-Social Working Group and the Michigan Caucus of Rank and File Educators. We are preparing to bring our combined forces to get petition signatures, organized by talking to our coworkers and neighbors on the shop floor and on the streets, and get local unions into this fight with us to take collective action and ultimately, alongside all of you, win this thing. So if you're listening in Michigan and you want to get involved, reach out. Let's throw down for the Green New Deal for public schools. Let's get the trillions that we and our students and our schools deserve. And I will pass it to Yvette. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Gavin. My name is Yvette Jordan, and I am a proud member of the North New Jersey DSA. I'm also a history teacher in Newark, New Jersey. Northern New Jersey DSA fully supports the Green New Deal for Schools campaign, and we have a great team who is working on it. We're hitting the ground running. Not only are we focusing on policy and forging internal and external coalitions and building a broad base that will sustain the campaign, we're focusing on educators and building trade unions, of course. However, the most important people who are parents and students, those are the ones who are really impacted by this. So how are we ready? Our script is already written. We are ready for phone banking. That's already scheduled. Our mapping is done. Our field work is all poised and set to go. We are recruiting volunteers already. We've selected our school district, which is Newark, New Jersey, and that's a Title I district. We have our school also selected, Mount Vernon School. You know, I know how this affects individuals myself. I live in Newark. I'm a teacher in Newark, and I've taught in schools where the infrastructure is crumbling, it's unhealthy, it's horrendous, and these kids have respiratory illnesses that are awful. I see it every day in my classroom. Asthma is really, really bad. Some have COPD and worse. Now, my peers are even worried about the COVID and the horrible, really broken down HVAC systems. These buildings are really in need of rehab, and they ought to be torn down and rebuilt. So, North New Jersey is ready. Are you ready? We fully support the campaign and are excited. I thank you. And now, Thea, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Yvette, and all of the chapter organizers. I'm just like, kind of my mind is reeling just hearing about all of the different local contexts in which organizers are doing the work to connect communities, connect the climate crisis, the crisis of austerity, racial capitalism, and connect those dots in their organizing practice. And it's really inspiring. So next, we're going to hear from some more DSA educators, and we're also going to bring Representative Bowman back to answer some questions. So I'm going to turn it over to my comrade, Eric Blanc, who's going to moderate a Q&A where our DSA educators are going to pose some questions to the representative. And if there's time, which I think there should be, we'll also take some more questions from the audience as well. So Eric, I'll pass it over to you.
Great. If the host could enable my video, that'd be fantastic. I'll start talking. It's great to see so many people on this call. It's an honor to, here we go. It's an honor to be on here with so many fantastic organizers. I have the privilege of introducing some educators who are going to be asking questions to Representative Bowman. Then we'll throw it open to questions from all of you. Make sure you put it in the Q&A box. And so just to start it off, the first person we're going to ask is Shira Cohen from Philadelphia. Can we, Shira, can you ask your question?
Yes, can you all see me? Hopefully. Yes. Hi, everybody. First of all, just solidarity to everyone who's here tonight. It's just good to see so many people talking about these issues. So Yvette actually got to this a little bit before, which I was so happy to hear about, just all of the medical issues and the asthma and the cancer, all of the things that educators and students and families are facing are a really important part of this conversation. And I was just hoping that Representative Bowman could talk a little bit more about how the Green New Deal connects to remediation of these toxic issues, what it means to potentially rebuild schools, remediate environmental hazards, and all of that stuff. So.
Yeah, so great question. So the bill takes a holistic approach to retrofits, and we refer to them as healthy green retrofits because they address both parts of that term. That means we're going to not only make energy efficient improvements and install solar panels, but also going to completely remove toxic materials like lead, asbestos, mold, and PCPs from building materials, water, and the air. It's so crazy. Today I went to an event in a part of my district that's majority Black and brown. It was a summer camp, and they served children from as young as 4 all the way up through high school. And this was a building that was in disrepair, that had toxic chemicals in it, and the kids had to attend summer camp in this space, obviously highlighting the need for a Green New Deal for public schools, but also retrofitting all of our buildings in a Green New Deal across the board. We're creating healthy environments for students and staff, and it's an absolute priority for us to do that, and the priority of this bill. Removing these health harms is one of the requirements of the retrofit grant program, and schools will get the money they need to make that happen. So great question. Thank you for that.
Great. Thank you, Representative. The next question we have is from Ashkan Jahangiri, New York City. Go ahead, Ashkan.
Thanks. My question for Representative Bowman builds off of what Gustavo was talking about. So what can students do? Because students have been, high school students especially, have been some of the most militant and inspiring people organizing for defending public education and also for climate change as a whole. I know that there's a global climate strike, another one that's going to happen towards the end of September, and I'm wondering if we can connect these struggles.
Yes, 100%. So as you alluded to, students have been at the forefront of the climate movement, but they've also been at the forefront of all movements throughout American history. The civil rights movement is one that comes to mind. So high school students are critical. There are many students in high school who have passion, have answers, have ideas, have vision, but haven't connected with groups like DSA and groups like Sunrise and others so that they can be activated in these spaces. And that's why one of the things we spoke about on the call about a week ago was really targeting high school students as part of not just this campaign, but just being engaged in the overall political process and civic engagement. So students are, high school students have been in the school system for over a decade. They've experienced firsthand all the things that are wrong with our school facilities. They are plugged into a lot of things that are happening in the real world that are problematic, that need to be changed, but they just need to plug into the right organization so that they can get mobilized in their community. So it's critical. And you don't have to be voting age, even though we should reduce the age to 16, but you don't have to be voting age to be engaged in civic engagement and political work. So yeah, it's essential.
Yeah, thanks, Representative. I'm personally excited. Hopefully see a bunch of students protesting, walking out September 24th and earlier. So, I know there's a lot of action on that, and it makes a big difference. The next, I'm very excited. As many of you know, Los Angeles has been at the fore of a lot of the fight around social justice issues in the schools for the needs of all of our students. We're lucky to have two fantastic educators from Los Angeles ask the next two questions. First, we have Lucy Garcia. Lucy, you up there?
I am, thanks. Thanks, Eric. Thank you to everyone for doing this. I was so excited to read your bill today, Representative Bowman. Let me just tell you my story. I was a Title I science educator, a Title I school science educator for 18 years. And I always taught climate change. And when I taught climate solutions, the kids always say to me, but Miss, why aren't we doing that? Why aren't they doing that? They would say they. Why aren't they doing that? And I'd, mumble under my breath, well, go ask your history teacher, because the fact of the matter is, in my opinion, to get proper equity in education, especially in this time of climate, we have to teach our teachers how to teach climate across the curriculum in every grade and in all subjects. Like, for example, you imagine kids trying to interrogate the question, what in US history set us up for this climate crisis, for these climate crises, right? A kid coming, because students come up with an idea for what to do about climate that goes beyond, the important slices. There's a STEM slice. I'm a science teacher. It's a slice, okay? The real problem is in culture and politics and history and equity. That's where the real struggle is gonna come in. So they come up with an idea. All right. So give them some civics education. Teach them how to do this. So our kids need again and again and again to look at all aspects of this whole giant climate crisis that we have. And I'm hoping that the money, some of the money that's going for equity, goes to train teachers to teach climate change, so that kids interrogate, and invent and, you know, and deliberate about all kinds of climate solutions on their own. And so that we're not slotting, you know, the certain kids into installing solar panels, which is good. We have to do a whole lot of that, but we also have to think. We have to, you know, find out how we got in this mess and how we can unite to get out of it. I don't think it's a simple story. Thank you so much. So my question is, how can we get funds to train teachers?
Yeah, so great question. One of the grant programs in our bill provides support for curriculum development tailored to local needs, to your point. It includes subjects related to the underlying principles of the Green New Deal, the intersection of climate, racial, and economic justice. So teachers in every school are going to have the resources for exploring local climate issues with their students. We also encourage the development of curriculums and engage with the actual transformation of the facilities so that students have a front row seat and are a part of the retrofit process. We are sparking their curiosity and imagination, two things that aren't a part of the school system as much as it should be when it comes to a whole range of climate careers. It includes social aspects of the process, how our community is being engaged in the design of the retrofit, etc. Why are we targeting schools in formerly redlined communities to receive this funding first, to your point about history and how we got to this point? What does expanding Title I funding have to do with climate change? So much potential for students to engage in all those questions and understand the intersections. And as you know, our schools haven't done a good enough job over the years of creating interactive learning spaces. And the Green New Deal for public schools looks to do that. Our schools haven't done a good enough job of creating self-directed learning opportunities and cooperative learning opportunities. The Green New Deal for schools looks to do that. So it's a revolution of the physical infrastructure, but also of the learning curriculum, which is essential. Thank you for the question, Lucy.
Thank you, Representative. We have another question from Los Angeles. We've got a tireless fighter for climate justice in schools, Mabel Wong. Mabel, you're up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Representative Bowman and allies in this fight. So in 2019, we organized to get LAUSD School Board to adopt the resolution to transition to 100% renewable energy by 2030. My question is, how can we get school district facilities across the nation to place transition to renewable energy infrastructure as a top priority, especially if facilities divisions do not see or agree with this urgency?
So great question. The simple answer is push your representatives and senators at the congressional level to adopt and support a Green New Deal for public schools. If we do it on a national level, we know locally they will follow. In addition, I'm happy to report that locally, the conversation has shifted here in New York City and New York State, and in many parts of the country, for what I'm hearing. Like the IPCC report yesterday laid it out very, very clearly. This is code red for humanity. Everyone understands the need. When we say a Green New Deal, people know what we're talking about. And as you know, this Green New Deal for public schools is piggybacking on Green New Deal for cities, introduced by Cori Bush, Green New Deal for public housing, introduced by Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, and the Green New Deal resolution, also introduced by Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. So this is why it's important to talk about the energy efficiency part of the retrofit also, because for most districts, a healthy green retrofit is going to cut a school's annual utility bills by 50%. So school districts, municipalities always love saving money. We also need to talk about education and curriculum opportunities in STEM and STEAM careers to unlock the brilliance and creativity of our kids. Parents know, and educators know, and our kids know, there's much more we can be doing in our schools. This is an example of what that is. Now, in the context of dealing with the climate emergency, I mentioned earlier, eliminating carbon emissions from schools is like taking 17 million cars off the road. That's huge. If we're doing robust organizing and talking to teachers, principals, parents, and everyone in the community, about what this means, about how our schools can make a major contribution to solving this crisis at the same time as we address racism and inequality in our education system, I know that's going to resonate with people in local communities. But as I said before on the call a week ago that was more private, we are doing as much listening and learning and engaging as we are sharing information, because people need to feel heard and they need to have a seat at the table as we build this, as we build support for this bill, but also evolve our consciousness towards understanding the urgency around getting green in all aspects of our lives. So thank you for that question.
Thank you.
And thanks, Mabel. And thank you, Representative Bowman. I know that there's a lot more questions that educators and students and parents have. We also know that we're going to be organizing around that. And so what we're going to be doing now is transitioning to talking about how folks can get involved and all of the next steps. And I want to thank Representative Bowman, and I'm going to pass it to Thea.
Thank you so much, Representative Bowman. Thank you, Comrade Eric, and thank you to all the educators that posed those important questions. So we all know that this would not be a DSA call if it didn't end with an ask. And in fact, there are going to be two asks. So as I said at the beginning of today's event, and as is, I think, even more clear than when I first said it, we need all hands on deck. This is an operation that is going from the bases all the way to Congress. We're organizing in communities across the country. And this is a really crucial week in Congress. I think Bowman really laid that out at the beginning of his comments. So we have lawmakers in the halls of Congress deciding the fate of trillions of dollars in infrastructure investment. And not enough pressure has been put on them in a variety of respects, but including around schools. And we really need to put them on notice right now that we need a lot of investment targeted to the working class communities that have borne the brunt of the pandemic and are on the front lines of the climate crisis. So we need to put those lawmakers on notice. And to this end, we've organized 4 phone banks this year. We need everyone to sign up to volunteer, to bring friends to sign up to volunteer, just like our massive phone banking operation for the PRO Act, where we made 1 million calls for labor rights. Volunteers who sign up for phone banks will speak directly with voters. So it's kind of like canvassing, but on the phone in target states, and then put them right on the line with their member of Congress so they can tell them why a Green New Deal for public schools is important right now. And we can flood their voicemails and really send a message that communities are engaged around this issue. So sign up for phone banks. We're dropping links in the chat over and over again. We have several shifts, so choose one that works for you. Just as important, we also need you involved as organizers in your local chapters. We heard from 5 chapters with active campaigns right now on this call. Right now, there are 56 DSA chapters in total that are involved in this campaign. They are working to build a base of rank and file educators, buildings, trades workers, parents, and community members to fight for green schools. If your chapter already has a campaign, which you might have learned about tonight, join it. If you're not sure if your chapter has a campaign, sometimes we get disengaged and we miss that last email, or we didn't go to the last general meeting and we don't know what's going on. So if you are not sure, that's fine. We have a form that is going to be dropped in the chat. It's our interest form. We will connect you directly. If you fill it out, we'll connect you directly with the chapter level leaders in your chapter or in a nearby chapter that is organizing a campaign. So again, we need folks around the country involved in this. I think it's clear why. It's been a fantastic evening. We've all learned a lot over the past hour. I'm personally more amped than ever to fight for the Green New Deal that we deserve. Workers and the world unite. Have a wonderful night, everybody.